hands trembling ever so slightly, but his mind was sharp. The deal on the table today wasn't just any deal. It was the one that could skyrocket his company into untouchable heights. Across from him, his best friend and business partner, Ryan, was already seated, scrolling casually on his phone as if the weight of their success didn't rest on this very moment. David's stomach churned with a mix of excitement and anxiety. He excused himself to the restroom, leaving Ryan at the table. The atmosphere of the luxurious cafe was lively, the air filled with the clinking of cutlery and muted conversations of the wealthy patrons. But as soon as David was out of earshot, something sinister unfolded. Emily, a waitress with quiet diligence, approached to refill Ryan's water. She wasn't in the habit of paying attention to what the patrons said, but today her ears caught words that froze her in place. Ryan's tone was low and deliberate as he spoke into his phone. "Yeah, everything's set," Ryan muttered. "David has no clue. Once this deal goes through, the company's mine. By the time he realizes what's happened, he'll be out in the cold." Emily nearly spilled the water pitcher as her breath hitched. Her heart raced, her instincts screaming at her to intervene. But what could she do? She was just a waitress, a bystander in the world of power and wealth. Yet, she couldn't shake the urgency of what she'd overheard. Ryan, the man David trusted most, was plotting a brutal betrayal. David returned to the table moments later, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Ryan greeted him with a smile so convincing, it would have fooled anyone. Anyone except Emily, who stood at the edge of the room, her hands shaking as she wrestled with a decision. Should she stay silent and carry on with her day? Or should she risk everything to warn a stranger? Emily clenched her fists, her mind racing. She didn't belong in their world. These people, with their designer suits and power-laden conversations, were far removed from her own life. But she couldn't unhear what she'd heard. Something about David's unguarded, trusting demeanor made her stomach twist with guilt at the thought of letting him walk into a trap. She watched as Ryan stood up to take a call outside, leaving David alone at the table, flipping through the contract before him. This was her moment. Her legs felt like lead as she approached him, her voice a whisper as she said, "Excuse me, Mr. Sullivan." David looked up, surprised. His brows furrowed slightly, but his tone was polite. "Yes." Emily hesitated, her heart thudding against her ribs. This man didn't know her, and she had no real proof to back her claim. But she had to try. "I don't want to overstep, but I overheard something. Something about your partner, Ryan." David's expression softened, but there was also a trace of confusion. "Go on," he said cautiously. Emily leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "I think he's planning to betray you. He was on the phone just now. He said once the deal is done, everything will be his." The words hit David like a gut punch. He blinked, trying to process what she'd just said. "That's impossible. You must have misunderstood." "I didn't," Emily said firmly, her voice trembling slightly. "I know I'm just a waitress, and this might sound crazy, but I could not tell you. He said you wouldn't see it coming." David leaned back, his mind racing. The room seemed to tilt ever so slightly. This was Ryan, his best friend since college, the man who'd stood by him through sleepless nights and ruthless boardroom battles. The thought of betrayal was unfathomable. But there was something in Emily's earnestness that planted a seed of doubt. "Thank you," he said after a long pause. I'll look into it." Emily nodded, relief washing over her face as she stepped back. She glanced nervously toward the door, where Ryan was still outside, pacing on his phone. She'd done her part, but the weight of her revelation lingered as David's expression hardened. When Ryan returned, his charm was in full force. He slid back into his seat, flashing an easy grin. "So, where were we?" David forced a smile, his heart thundering. "Just going over everything one last time." Ryan nodded, pouring himself more water. "Good man. You always double-check things. That's why we make such a great team, right?" David's throat tightened. He nodded absently, but the words now felt hollow. The celebration that had felt certain hours ago was now drenched in unease. The doubt Emily had planted began to grow roots, twisting through David's mind. Could Ryan really betray him? As the evening wore on, David's suspicions deepened. He needed answers, and fast. After dinner, he stepped outside, pulling out his phone to call someone he trusted. Julian, a private investigator he'd worked with in the past, answered on the second ring. "David Sullivan," Julian greeted, his tone brisk. "What's the situation?" "I need you to look into someone for me," David said, his voice tight. "Ryan King, my business partner. Something doesn't feel right." Julian didn't hesitate. "I'll start right away. Give me 48 hours. David ended the call, the knot in his stomach tightening. He turned to see Emily lingering near the cafe's entrance, watching him with a mix of concern and hope. "Did you talk to him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't sign anything," David replied, "but I need proof." "Thank you for telling me." Emily nodded, her relief palpable. I hope I'm wrong. For your sake." David gave her a tight smile, but deep down, he knew the storm was far from over. 2 days later, Julian called back. "David," Julian said, his tone grim. "You're not going to like what I found." David gripped the edge of his desk. "Tell me." "Ryan's been moving funds out of your accounts. Small amounts, just below the threshold of suspicion. He's funneling them into an offshore account. The transfers started about a year ago, right around the time you began negotiating this new deal." David's breath hitched. "How much are we talking?" "Millions," Julian replied bluntly. "Close to 5. And that's not all. He's been in contact with your competitors. It looks like he's setting up to take control of the company once you sign the deal." David's stomach turned. It was true. Emily had been right. "I want him stopped," David said, his voice cold. "What do I need to do?" "Freeze the accounts he's been using," Julian advised. "You've got enough evidence to justify it. But be careful. Don't let him know you're onto him until you're ready to move." David nodded, his resolve hardening. Ryan had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. That evening, David invited Ryan to a private meeting at their office. Ryan arrived, all smiles, but the moment he stepped into the room, he could feel the shift in the air. "What's going on?" Ryan asked, his smile faltering. David stared at him, his jaw tight. "I know everything. The offshore accounts, the stolen funds, the betrayal." Ryan froze, but only for a moment. Then he leaned back, his smirk returning. "You've been working too hard, David. You're imagining things." "Don't lie to me," David snapped. "I've seen the transfers. I know about the competitors. You've been planning this for over a year." Ryan's mask slipped. For a brief second, fear flickered in his eyes before he leaned forward, his tone venomous. "Fine," Ryan hissed. "Yeah, I planned it. Do you have any idea what it's been like? Standing in your shadow while you get all the credit? I deserve more, David. And I wasn't going to wait around for scraps." David's anger boiled over. "You could have talked to me. We could have worked something out. But instead, you decided to steal from me. From us." Ryan's expression darkened. "You wouldn't have done anything. You're too busy being the golden boy." "I did what I had to do." "No, Ryan," David said coldly. "You didn't have to do this. And now you're done. The accounts are frozen. The evidence is in my hands. It's over." Ryan's face twisted with rage. "You think you've won? This isn't over, David. I'll make sure you regret this." David stood his ground. "Get out of my sight." As Ryan stormed out, David felt a wave of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal. But there was also relief. He caught Ryan before it was too late. David stood in the empty office, the echo of Ryan's threats ringing in his ears. He had fought too hard, built too much to let it all crumble now. The betrayal burned deeply, but the confrontation had steeled his resolve. Ryan was out of the picture, but the aftermath was far from over. David turned to his phone and made a call. Within minutes, his legal team was mobilized. They would ensure the company's accounts were secured, all ties with Ryan severed, and the stolen funds recovered. Yet, even with the financial safeguards in place, David couldn't shake the sting of betrayal from someone he had considered family. The next morning, David arrived at the office to find Emily waiting near his door. She looked hesitant, clutching a small notebook against her chest. "Emily," he greeted, his voice softer than usual. "Hi, Mr. Sullivan," she replied nervously. "I just wanted to check in. After everything that happened. Are you okay?" David paused, genuinely touched by her concern. "I'm getting there. Thanks to you, I caught this in time." Emily shifted on her feet. "I'm glad I could help. But is it really over? I mean, people like him don't just give up." David nodded slowly. "You're right. Ryan's dangerous and he's not done. But I'm ready for him now." He hesitated before adding, "You've done more for me than I can ever repay. If you ever need anything at all, just say the word." Emily's cheeks flushed slightly, but she shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. I just did what I thought was right." David offered a faint smile. "It's rare to meet someone with that kind of courage. If you ever change your mind, my door is always open." The next few days were a whirlwind of damage control. David worked closely with Julian and his legal team to ensure Ryan couldn't retaliate, but the tension remained palpable. Then, just as things seemed to settle, Julian called with an update. "David," Julian began, his tone grave, "we found something. Ryan's not done. He's trying to smear your name." David's grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean?" "He's reaching out to media outlets, spinning lies about you. Financial misconduct, offshore dealings, corruption. Most of it's baseless, but a few grains of truth could make the lies stick." David clenched his jaw. "Can we stop him?" "We're working on it," Julian assured him. "I've already contacted some of the journalists. The good news is we've got more than enough evidence to discredit him. But you need to brace yourself. It's going to get messy." David sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Do whatever it takes. I won't let him win." The storm hit the next morning. A prominent business blog published an article accusing David of unethical practices. The piece was riddled with inaccuracies, but the damage was immediate. Investors started calling, concerned about the allegations. The company's stock dipped slightly. Emily burst into his office, a copy of the article clutched in her hand. "David, have you seen this?" "I have," David said grimly, rubbing his temples. Emily's eyes blazed with determination. "This is all lies. What can we do?" David looked at her, his exhaustion evident. "We stay ahead of it. Julian's team is already working on countering the story. But the next few weeks are going to be rough." Emily stepped closer. "Whatever you need, I'm here." Her sincerity was a balm to David's frayed nerves. He nodded. "Thank you, Emily. That means more than you know." In the days that followed, David and his team launched a full-scale response. They released detailed statements debunking Ryan's claims and presented evidence of his betrayal and fraud. The tide began to turn as the media shifted focus, painting Ryan as the villain. Throughout it all, Emily was a constant presence. She worked tirelessly, assisting with everything from drafting statements to calming nervous investors. Her quick thinking and unwavering support were invaluable, and David began to rely on her more than ever. One evening, as the office emptied out, David found Emily still at her desk, poring over documents. "You should go home," he said, leaning against her cubicle wall. "I'm almost done," she replied with a small smile. David shook his head. "Emily, you've already done more than enough. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without you." She looked up at him, her expression warm. "You would have managed. But I'm glad I could help." David hesitated for a moment. "You're not just helping, Emily. You've become an essential part of this company. Have you ever thought about taking on a bigger role?" Emily blinked, taken aback. "A bigger role?" "Yes," David said. "You've proven yourself over and over again. I think it's time to make it official." In the weeks that followed, Emily's transition from behind-the-scenes assistant to a leadership role was seamless. David announced her promotion at a company meeting, citing her dedication and exceptional instincts as key reasons for the decision. For Emily, the shift was surreal. She went from a waitress serving tables to a respected corporate leader in a matter of months. But the journey hadn't been easy, and she was determined to make the most of the opportunity David had given her. As she stood in her new office one evening, looking out at the city skyline. She couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come. The challenges ahead didn't scare her, they fueled her. And for David, watching Emily rise to the occasion reminded him that even in the darkest moments, there was always a glimmer of hope. Together, they had faced betrayal and chaos. But now, they were building something stronger than ever. Ryan's shadow still loomed in the background, but David knew one thing for certain. With Emily by his side, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. A week after the company stabilized and the false media storm died down, David received an unexpected call from Julian. His investigator's voice was steady but tinged with urgency. "We've got him, David," Julian said. David leaned forward in his chair, his pulse quickening. "What do you mean?" "Ryan's been hiding in plain sight," Julian explained. "We traced his communications back to a private suite in a luxury hotel downtown. He's still trying to push his lies to anyone who will listen, but his resources are running out. And here's the kicker, he's also making calls to some dangerous people. It looks like he's desperate for leverage." David frowned. "Dangerous how?" "Send me everything," David said, his voice hard. "I want this done for good." Within hours, David's legal team filed a new motion to expose Ryan's financial dealings and block his access to any remaining resources. Meanwhile, Julian tipped off the authorities about Ryan's suspected illegal activities, ensuring that his every move was being watched. That evening, David sat in his office when Emily walked in, holding a report. "They've frozen the last of Ryan's accounts," she said, her tone firm. "And his connections are backing off now that the truth about him is out." David nodded, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. "He's done. There's nothing left for him to use against us." Emily hesitated before sitting across from him. "You've handled this with so much strength. I don't know if I could have done the same." David smiled faintly. "I didn't do it alone. You've been my anchor through all of this, Emily." Her cheeks flushed slightly, but she met his gaze with quiet confidence. "It's what you deserve. For someone to have your back." 2 days later, the final blow came. Ryan was arrested on charges of fraud and embezzlement after Julian uncovered evidence tying him to illegal offshore transactions. The headlines shifted, painting him as a disgraced businessman whose greed led to his downfall. For David, the closure was bittersweet. Ryan had been a friend once, and the betrayal still stung, but justice had been served. At the company's next meeting, David addressed the entire staff. "We've been through challenges that could have broken us," he said, his voice strong. "But we came out stronger because of people like Emily, who remind us of what integrity and loyalty truly mean." The applause was thunderous as Emily stood beside him, her heart swelling with pride. As weeks turned into months, Emily continued to thrive in her leadership role, proving herself indispensable to the company. And for David, watching her succeed was a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope and resilience could lead to something extraordinary. In the end, they weren't just rebuilding the company, they were forging a new legacy.